York Times, man won 3 Pulitzer Prizes. The World is Flat, still a bestseller.
You bet.
Please welcome to the program, Tom Friedman. Good morning, Mr. Friedman.
Good morning, Don.
How are you?
Great.
Anybody ever call you Tommy?
My friends back home.
Really?
Yeah, all the people I grew up with.
Tommy Friedman. That just doesn't seem right, does it?
Yeah.
It's too frivolous.
Probably doesn't work as a byline in the New York Times.
Too frivolous. Too frivolous.
Then I was talking to Gregory, speaking of him, yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and he was referring to Robert Gates as Bob.
Bobby, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Well, I think the Baker Hamilton report was it's an important document, Don. It provides a kind of consensus conclusion of where we are right now. Not that, comes to any surprise, but and I think the report was not just a report. I think it was a report card on the whole Bush defense foreign policy. And it not only gave them, I would say, a failing grade, but it basically accused them of malpractice of foreign policy. And I think it's quite a devastating document.
Malpractice of foreign policy. Give me a couple examples. I'm not talking to Iran, Syria, and all those folks.
Well, that's part of it. I would say it accuses them of essentially incompetence in the prosecution of the war, but also leaving a diplomatic vacuum open in the Middle East in a way that has missed any opportunity of buttressing what's going on there with any kind of help from neighboring countries.
So these 79 points, and you've read them all, I guess, huh?
I've read the summary of the report. I have not read all 79 points.
I did notice that in that conversation between Gregory and Tony Snow, Gregory was not able to say that he had read the entire report.
Yes.
That's just not good.
Yeah.
You've got to read the whole report if you're going to jump quickly with the press release.
Sure.
But they're pretty much right, are they?
Yeah, I think it's a very good, everything I've read of it is a really accurate diagnosis of what I felt. I think a lot of other people have felt for a long time, which
Why, by the way, why haven't you read the whole thing? What have you been doing?
I've just been actually spending my time reporting and trying to figure out where to go from here, which is my focus, because there's nothing in everything I have read in the report that strikes me as surprising. I think it's been pretty clear to me for a while this thing is not working. In fact, it's failing, and we need to dramatically change course. And my own takeaway from the report is that, and I've been feeling this for a while, that we have to set a date, a clear and defined date circled on the calendar for us to leave there. Because I don't believe we have any hope, Don. We don't have a dime's worth of hope of getting any cooperation from anyone out there. Not Iran, not Syria, not the parties on the ground, unless, and even if we do this, cooperation is not guaranteed, but until and unless they face very clearly the reality that we are leaving. And, you want to work with Syria, you want to work with Iran. These are mean, tough SOBs who right now think they have us over a barrel. And the only way you can possibly enlist their help, not to mention the militias, not to mention the Arab states, is if they have to stare in the face the very clear reality that on date X, 6, 9, 10 months from now, we are gone. And I think that's the only thing that is going to break this thing loose.
Well, what happens? What would be different? What will be different?
If we do that?
No, if we say we're going to leave tomorrow or we're going to leave June 1st, what difference does it make?
Well, either one would be fine by me, but I think tomorrow would probably not be realistic. But let's take June 1st. Let's play it out, because one of the things that's sort of bothered me, Don, is a kind of groupthink has taken over Washington, and the groupthink is that my God, if we even think of leaving, the whole Middle East is going to blow up. Well, let's just step back and ask, what if we did set a date? I think it's an important exercise to go through. Well, first of all, Iran right now, Iran has had us exactly where Iran wants us, which is they did not want Iraq to succeed. They want us on the ground, bleeding, mired in Iraq, but with our troops nearby, so that we would never think, and I'm not advocating this, but we would never think of attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, because our troops would be totally exposed next door. That's number one. The minute we say we're leaving, Iran Iran situation completely changes, what we're basically saying is, yeah, you guys, you just won southern Iraq. What is second prize? That's number one. Number two, people say, but there'll be a civil war. That's true, there will be a civil war. The Syrians will have to support the Sunnis. The Iranians will have to support the Shiites. So these two 20-year-old allies will then be on opposite sides of the civil war. They will then be in the position of either trying to quell that civil war or indirectly fighting each other. Now let's look at the militias. You know, the concept in bond trading, Don, of a free option, where you basically can't lose. You know, in some ways, the militia leaders, I'm not talking about the Iraqi people, we've provided a floor under them for their civil war. So they can be as obstinate with one another as they want, not make the political bargains, because they know we're providing a floor under the place won't go totally crazy as long as we're there. They need to pay retail for their mischief, and right now they're paying wholesale. Then there's the surrounding Arab states.
I don't know how we make them do that, though, do you?
Oh, no, we can't make them do it. All I'm telling you is once we're gone,
Yeah.
they will pay retail for their violence, okay?
Okay.
That's what I mean.
That's a good point.
And then, fourthly, I'd say, what has been the position of the surrounding Arab states? You know,
Well, you won all those Pulitzer Prizes.
the position of the surrounding Arab states has been, you can't leave and we won't help. I mean, what's been the Saudi position? You can't leave? Oh, but us help? No. Well, the minute they think we're leaving, they're going to face the reality that we are leaving, and you better kick in and help here, or this is going to spill up on your border. And right now, Don, you know, we have had diplomacy, and people in the report even talk, we need to talk to Syria and Iran, but it's diplomacy without leverage, and diplomacy without leverage is like playing baseball without a bat. And right now, I'm not guaranteeing in any way if we set a date, it's all going to work. And no. But what I'm saying, where I've come to in my own thinking, I'm just not afraid to do that anymore. These people have got to understand that we are leaving. And by the way, I would add a fifth thing, Don. We are part of the problem. That is the American occupation, and it is an occupation for a lot of Iraqis, just daily checkpoints. 4 years later, it gets real old. We are part of the problem. Whether we're 20% of the problem or, 30% or 40, I don't know. We'll find out when we leave. But for all of these reasons, I believe that you've got to set a date right now.
Talking with Tom Friedman from the New York Times about the Iraq situation, obviously. Well, the neocons are all screaming that this amounts to a surrender and that we're selling out our allies in the region. There are folks claiming that Secretary Baker has a history of hostility toward Israel, and that are they right about any of that?
Well, I don't see what allies we've had. The Arabs haven't. Our Arab allies have not picked up a finger in support of this because basically they do not want to see modernism or any kind of democratization succeed in the region. I don't care about talking to Iran and Syria. We've done that before. We should do it in the future. I've got no problem with that if they can deliver something. My only problem with it is a pragmatic one. I don't want to do it without leverage. But to say we shouldn't talk to them is nuts. Who knows what you'll find? So, at this stage, it's not time for ideologies over, and we got to get out of this mess. And if we have to leave behind another mess, there is no clean ending to this. So Bush is right about that. But if there's going to be a messy ending, and that's inevitable, that's baked in the cake, then I want there to be a messy ending without us rather than with us, and I'll deal with the mess from outside where I have much more leverage.
What's that mess going to be? What do you think it's going to be in the final
Well,
analysis?
it's an important question. And again, these are things I'm trying to ask myself, not just assume. Look, there's the morning after and the morning after the morning after. The morning after we leave, you have no question, there'll be all kinds of Shiite and Sunni violence in Iraq. One of the things I learned in living through the Lebanese Civil War, sometimes people have to have their civil war. Sometimes they have to play out their madness. And that, unfortunately, happened in Lebanon. And it took a while. It only stopped when people said, I can't stand this anymore. And that's basically what stopped it. And so, yes, there'll be a violence, but who knows? Maybe when they actually, as they say, have to pay the retail price for their violence and face the full impact of it, that maybe it will induce some rationality rationality. And by the way, when people say, well, the price of oil will go to $100, well, you know, my own feeling is make my day, because the sooner it goes to 100, the more we're going to shift to alternatives, and the quicker it's going to go to 20. So, you know, I wish that difference of $80 would go to the U.S. Treasury, not the Iranian Treasury. But if I have to make that transfer payment for 5 years in order to really end my addiction to oil, that would be a great thing. But at the heart of it, Don, is the fact that these people at the heart of this conflict, they believe bad stuff. We had a civil war in our country because we thought some people believed bad stuff. They believed bad stuff about human dignity and the equality of human beings. These guys out there, they believe some bad stuff. And they may need to just have this civil war. But I'm not convinced that it's going to blow up the whole region. See, you know, you've got some hard walls. Is Iran really going to want to fuel a civil war? Is Saudi Arabia? I don't think so. But I think if they're faced with the prospect, they might have, you know, might finally decide to come around and try to be a little bit helpful.
But it just seems to me, in listening to you and others, that at the end of the day, I hate to use that phrase, but when the dust clears, we're going to have another nut to deal with, whoever it's Al-Qaeda or whoever it is. But on top of all that, we've got who knows how many dead Iraqis, and we do know how many dead Americans, you know?
Don, you know,
What was the point?
I certainly had to...
What was the point?
Yeah, I've certainly had to come to terms with this myself, because I thought it was really important if we could somehow collaborate with people there to tilt that world onto a different track. I just thought it was important and hard. And the Bush team, unfortunately, thought it would be important and easy. But that said, this has failed. There is nothing that we are going to produce in Iraq, in my view, in the near term, that we will be proud of, or that will in any way justify, in any rational terms, the costs in human lives and treasure. And that's just the reality. What I don't want to do is throw more good lives after good lives at this point. And that is where we are right now. And I don't think we need to wait. The idea of training more people, Don, think about that. Who's been training the insurgents? Nobody's training them. And they've been defeating the U.S. Army. This isn't about the way, it's about the will. The idea that anyone needs to train Iraqis how to shoot a gun? My God, if there's one thing they all know, it's that.
Yeah, good point.
So, you know, it's not about training. It's about, do you have at the core of that country a will of, you know, a majority of people to live together? And the other thing, one of the
Before that, are you willing to fight and die for your country?
Yeah, I mean,
before that.
we are, you know, and the problem in Iraq up to now, Don, has been, in my view, that our vision for that place, and you know, and shame on me for hoping that people wanted, you know, a different Iraq, you know, as much as I did. But the problem is that it's been clear to me is that our vision for Iraq is every Iraqi second choice. All right, that is, the Kurds' first choice is an independent Kurdistan. The Shiites' first choice is a theocratic Iraq that they dominate, and the Sunnis' first choice is a return to Saddam's rule. So democracy, a democratic power-sharing Iraq, is all of their second choice. And we cannot go on having our first choice kids die for their second choice. That's just it. We lost. You know, we lost, Don. It's a tragedy, but it's over. Yeah. And we cannot simply go on wasting more money and giving up more lives for something that we will never be proud of at the end of the day. And, you know, that's how I've come to it. And if there's any chance of salvaging anything from there, it's only going to come when we look these guys in the eye and say, folks, we don't want it any more than you do, okay? We are leaving, all right? So you're now going to pay full retail price for all your madness and mischief. Now, if you want to continue paying that price, go right ahead, but you're going to do it with us. But if you don't want to continue paying that price, and I'm talking to Syria and Iran as well, then we might sit down and have a little chat.
Well, the president president looked like a whooped dog yesterday, didn't he?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes from that office and curls up into a fetal position, and he hides under the bed with Barney because,
Like Lyndon Johnson at the end of Vietnam.
yeah, in some ways it's well, thank God, nowhere near the number of lives, but it's been a devastating failure, and we haven't seen the full price of it, even yet. That's the really, scary thing. But you can't go on without. There's no way to produce any kind of salvageable outcome without creating some leverage on the parties. And right now, they have all the leverage, because as long as we're sitting on Iraq, Iraq implodes. And we take the full force of the blast, along with the Iraqi people, the innocent Iraqis. The minute we leave, Iraq explodes. And the reality that Iraq could explode on Iran, Syria, the militias, etc., that is the only leverage we have. The fear of that is the only leverage we have to get them to come to some kind of salvageable, rational solution. But it won't be much more than that.
What do you think the president's going to do?
Honest to God, Don, I don't know.
I know, but what do you think?
Yeah, here's my guess is that if you mentioned earlier, that we've had 31 casualties in like the first week in December. God forbid that the casualties really start to mount, or that you have like one incident, and Lord knows I pray this doesn't happen, of a kind of a Beirut bombing, because I think that the country right now is, we're one really bad day in Iraq away from the country simply saying, Mr. President, we're out of here, okay? And I think the way that will be manifested on is a break in the Republican Party. That the John Warners, people who, not McCain and Hagel, who've already been there in one way or another, but centrist Republicans go to the White House and tell Bush it's over. And that's my view of how this will break. That it can't come from Democrats. It can only come from the very heart of the Republican Party.
Almost like the conversation, whether it was Howard Baker or whoever went and finally told Nixon.
Yeah. These things always break from within and from the top. And that's how I think it will happen. But the idea that we have time or that we have leverage right now, we don't. We're in an absolutely terrible situation. We have to look at it that way, call it by its real name, and salvage what we can. Because at the end of the day, Don, I have a feeling this is just going to come down between them and us. That is, I think what the American people said in the last election was that they fired George Bush. And they basically said, we were with you on this. We too thought it might be not a bad idea to try to implant some democracy in that part of the world with some decency. But it hasn't worked, Mr. President. And now it's coming down to actually their country or ours. That if we continue to pour treasure, manpower, and the unity of our country down Iraq, it's going to be a real disaster. So it's going to come down to our party or theirs, our country or theirs. And you know what? I love my country a lot more than they love theirs. So it's going to be my country, not theirs. I think that's where the public's going.
Thank you very much for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Don.
Tom Friedman, New York Times, 13 till the hour.